post back to us, and we should be good. All right. You have the documents?
Yes, I have it up on my monitor here.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So let's see. Witchlight post-mortem. Post-morts. Is this it? Yeah. All right. So, we're live. We're streaming on 3 different platforms. It's you, it's me, it's Gresham, and it's Orpheus, and we're going to talk about Wild Beyond the Witchlight, because we both ran this campaign from start to finish, and we started at almost the same exact time, and we finished at almost the same exact time, despite delays and changes to schedules and all of that. We still managed to kind of start and finish roughly in the same ballpark. I don't know if it's the same number of sessions. How many sessions did you clock?
We were right around 35.
And we were at 37. So very, very similar in many ways. All right. At the end of every campaign, I normally do either a wrap party and or a post-mortem. Things are crazy busy right now with Extra Life Weekend last weekend, and then 3 Curse of Strahd games starting this weekend. So there hasn't been a good time to schedule a wrap party with my group, but we were able to set aside an hour or so to talk about our campaigns, and I have a lot to say about this campaign. Fortunately, we did somewhat semi-professional stuff here, and we wrote some questions for ourselves to answer ahead of time. See the evolution. We're growing. We're changing. We're getting stronger and better every time. Real quick preface. Right off the bat, I ran this with my World Patch document, 60 pages of homebrew rules that tailor the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons experience to be something that I enjoy and that hopefully my players enjoy. The players keep coming back for more, so I'm assuming that they're enjoying it. With all the other options of people to play D&D with, they still keep playing in my stupid, crazy game, so I think the rules are making it pretty fun. We did an isekai adventure. Which is to say they were quote-unquote real-world modern-day people who got mixed up in a fantastical adventure, only to discover that they were never real-world people at all, and they kind of reclaimed their phantasonas, as it were. And it was a big part of the story, was sort of learning who they were as they played the game. Anybody that's a big fan of amnesia stories, any Final Fantasy fanatics out there where your character doesn't know shit about themselves, and then as you play through the game they learn about themselves, that was the kind of recurring theme for my game. And I had 5 players, and I was able to maintain all 5 players through the entire run, so it was very nice. Thursdays are kind of a cursed day for me, so it was nice that it kind of all worked out. Orph, what's a quick preface about how you ran your game and what happened in it?
Sure. Kind of almost a polar opposite. We were not an isekai game. We were more of a standard 5e heroic adventure where the people were from Faerun and then adventured in the Feywild. Unfortunately enough, I lost 2 players along the way, but gained an amazing player that took over the role of an NPC, which I feel like is one of the hardest things to do as DMing, is to introduce a new character well. Their whole storyline was kind of based on one of the hooks from the book, which was regaining their lost thing, and gaining that lost thing, and then saving the queen, kind of rolling those all into one. It was pretty crazy, but we all ended up having fun by the end.
Nice. All right. So let's jump into it then. Why did you decide to run this adventure? So you start. Why did you decide to run Wild Beyond the Witchlight? What drew you in? What made you decide I need to run this? There's so many campaigns you could have ran. Why did you decide to run this campaign?
Great question. So for me, I had never done this before. I had never bought an adventure the week it came out, read it, that week and then decided to run it. I wanted to go through that experience where it's like hot off the press, run it right after I read it. And I think you get into a fever dream when you do that. So number one was that. Number two, I have never done a Feywild adventure. I had never done a experience into Whimsy. The previous campaign that I ran before that was a Tomb of Annihilation game, which was almost, if you ran through that adventure, it's nothing like this one. So I wanted to try this out. And thirdly, I had never ran a campaign with people from the Crash Gym server before, so I was excited to run with them and meet them, and I have now gained a new friend from it that lives very close by. I don't want to dox anybody. You know who you are out there. But yeah, that's kind of why I did it, and I'm happy I did. How about yourself, Crash?
All right, so I'll show you exactly why I decided to run it. I ran it because of a certain bat-winged helmeted individual. I'm trying to find him. Let's see.
I think I know who you're referring to.
Yeah. Man, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now because I'm like completely in Curse of Strahd mode.
Warduke?
Yes, thank you, Warduke. So I'm a kid who grew up in the 80s because I'm super old, and I was like, this is just another Jeremy Crawford like whimsy overload. Like, I fell for his tricks with Rime of the Frost Maiden, where he said it was going to be scary, and it wasn't scary except the parts that Dom made scary. Like, there's always like, they always market it one way and then they never deliver, right? And so then they started really pushing hard on Twitter, and then I was like, wait, are those the characters from the 1980s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon show? Is that what is that how whimsical and stupid this campaign is going to be? There's like Displacer Beast wearing a butterfly costume. There's a Displacer Beast kitten that's so adorable. And I'm like, I don't really like Carnival. I don't really want to do a Carnival. And then I see on Twitter, I see Warduke. And I was like, are you serious? like Warduke is in this adventure? Like, okay, all right, you know what? Let's do it. And then I started to read more about it, and I started to find out more about it, and then I was like, oh, the Carnival's like the first like 2 sessions tops. And then it's actually an Alice in Wonderland style adventure. And I was like, I like Alice in Wonderland. Oh, they've even got a Jabberwocky. I mean, come on, this is great. And then there was so much meta, right? There's an NPC named Thaco. There's to make fun of like second edition players and whatnot. And there's like everything from the 80s cartoon is in there. They've got Wizard of Oz references, all that stuff. So I'm just like, this is perfect. This is like, they got the memes baked in to this campaign. They got the memes baked in. And then when I found out who the main good guy, bad guy is, right? The queen, I was like, what? This is nuts. Like, and so I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm going to run it. I'm excited about it. So I was a victim of advertising. They did a good job of advertising this campaign, and I went from not interested at all to I have to run it. I was also looking for something short, and as written,
it could be short.
This campaign should only take 20 sessions as written. That's my professional opinion. But we'll cover that like later. Yeah. All right, question number 2, we already answered, was, before we even started, what was your hook and why? It sounds like you went with kind of the 3 hooks that they recommended from the adventure, mix and match. Is that sort of what was going on?
That is absolutely correct. I took them all, I put them into a hook blender, blended them all together, and then served them to everyone as a hook smoothie, and everyone drank it down immediately.
Well...
I even used, and I'm pretty sure it is on DM's Guild for free. We did the child adventure. They were all kid adventurers. I got to listen to a very, very good kid voice. I didn't think it was possible for an adult to do a kid voice that good. I believe the once his wife should actually be a voice actor.
Oh,
Because her
wow.
kid voice is it's fantastic.
Nice.
And you can't do certain things that you would normally do in D&D in a kid adventure. Like you can't broadsword a kid in the face.
What?
But,
Are you not supposed to do that?
You probably should.
So I have to ask, baked into this adventure is the caveat that children are not supposed to receive any harm, which the writers completely ignore for like most of the campaign. But there's a rule that if the players try to hurt a child, that child is teleported to like a safe room or something until Zybilna is unfrozen. I threw that in the trash like right away. I was like, well, that's dumb. And I threw that in the trash right away. Like, how are we supposed to have child slaves if we can't? I mean, just because they take an HP damage, they're taking emotional damage. They've been kidnapped from their families and forced to work at a evil toy factory. I feel like that's worse than taking damage. Yeah. So what I'm, yeah. Okay. I mean, it's cool. Second place was running as children. I was going to go with the child angle, but then I was like, the 1980s Dungeons and Dragons characters are here. The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon roller coaster is here. Like, there's a Peter Pan DLC from Daniel Kahn. There's obvious like Wizard of Oz stuff everywhere. It's 100% Alice in Wonderland. I was like, it's so pop culture. It's so meme infused. I was like, it has to be an isekai adventure. I have to run this as an isekai adventure. They have to be people from the real world who get pulled into this. And then as I read through the adventure and I saw that Zybilna had these 5 champions that were sealed away in these stones or whatever, I was like, why is that not like one of the hooks for the adventure? Like, why is that not one of the hooks for the adventure? So I was like, they're going to be there's 5 players. They're going to be the 5 champions of the stone. And of the stones, and they, in order to succeed against Zybilna, the 5 of them had to be removed from the equation. But magic, high fantasy magic, you can't kill somebody. That's too easy to bring somebody back from being killed. So they were banished, and they were brainwashed, and they were polymorphed or cursed into human form, right? So that you just had no idea where they were, that they didn't know where they were, and it was like. It was very cool, and I feel like it paid off well, and it added so much flavor and uniqueness to the campaign for me as a DM and also for the players. I think everybody had a really good time with it, so I was very happy with my custom hook. But my backup was for sure going to be play as children, like child heroes. Like I was definitely leaning towards that. All right, how did you change it from the raw adventure? So Orph, you go first. How did you change it from the raw adventure?
Okay, well, first, and maybe this is going to go into another plot point later in our conversation, but so many of the characters that you meet through the module that are written in, that have fabulous art, that have a full dramatis personae, all of those type of things, they're only supposed to meet them for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So all of those people either followed the characters throughout or had a much more impactful tone on the story. And I think this happened in both of our adventures. Best example of that is Sir Talavar, who...
Right.
I believe in the module, after you rescue him, he gives you deuces and flies away to give you a present later on.
Yeah, at the very end of the game, if you freed Talavar and your DM remembers that you to do it, you get the chime of opening. The very important, you don't have to figure out this door puzzle chime of opening that neither of my groups used to avoid having to do the door puzzle, even though they had a chime of opening. That chime of opening. Yeah. And look at this Waluigi-ass dragon right here. You telling me that you're just going to have him show up for 5 minutes? No. This guy stays the whole game. If your Talavar didn't stay the whole game, shame on you. This guy, I've seen stuff in the fan community where Talavar is secretly the bad guy, like the main bad guy. Like he works for the Court of Summer. He got caught trying to cause issues. And then there are some groups that he was like kind of the end boss. Like, which I thought was kind of cool. I definitely had him as loyal to Summer, despite everything that happened in both of my games. So any information that he was able to glean from his adventures, he definitely took back to the Summer Court because he's a fey creature. That's what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what else? So you changed it that you built it around those characters sticking around longer. Was that one of the major changes you made?
That's one of the major changes I made. Absolutely. We had, and I think both of our groups did, more fights than were written into the adventure. Kind of the closing thing that happened in my carnival is they had a huge fight in the staff area of the carnival with the three thieves, and it was tight. I used three Giphy elites. That was the Shadow, the Pig Girl, and the Quickling, and it was tight, but they were able to pull it off. But they had gone through that entire time. It was very much building to that moment. They weren't sure if they were going to fight at all, because this was 4 sessions into the campaign. There had been no combat, and then they were harassing Mr. Witch and Mr. Light about something, and the thieves heard them and came in and started whooping ass. It was very fun for me.
Nice. I definitely underutilized the three thieves. I didn't do nearly as in any of my games. I didn't really use the three thieves very well.
Absolutely. And one big thing I changed is I took out all of the Valor's Call and the League of Malevolence.
Really, all of it.
Replaced them with the Power Ranger.
So yeah, I would say that's a pretty significant change to the adventure. Reskinning the bad guys as Power Rangers. It's not that much different. You took a bunch of cartoon characters from the '90s instead of a bunch of cartoon characters from the '80s. So.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Headphones are doing something very crazy.
I can hear you just fine. Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened.
Oh, all right. Well, I can hear you. I can hear you the whole time.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, that's a pretty significant change.
Well, my wife tried calling me, and then I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, yes,
all right.
I replaced Valor's Call and the villains.
Yes. Okay. Fair. Did you use any of the Daniel Kahn DLC for this campaign?
I did.
Okay.
I used under the stump.
Okay. That was a good one. Yeah, to expand. Yeah.
They wanted to go find Agdon because he had beat them the first time that they fought, and yeah, they had really bad feels because that initial fight with him.
Oh, Agdon was absolutely OP. Agdon was absolutely OP for a low-level boss. Yeah. He wasn't like Cerberus of the Forge Odyssey bad, but he was up there. He was a very tough low-level encounter. In both of my groups, he just spanked both of my groups easily. So that was definitely an issue. And I also used within Brigand's Tollway. I used everything from Daniel Kahn for this, except the carnival stuff, because I already felt that it was too much carnival, and I wasn't about to add like 2 more sessions of carnival bullshit. So, but everything else that he did, I did use. We didn't encounter all of it, but without Daniel Kahn's DLC, this campaign would have felt very, very light, and it would have felt very, very front-loaded. Because they put way too much time and care and attention into a carnival that would only take 1 or 2 sessions tops. And
Right.
then they just progressively put less and less effort into the adventure as you went through it. Every chapter, you could tell that they were like, "Oh, we're still making this adventure? Oh my god." Like, it felt bad reading the adventure to see each chapter get weaker and shorter than the previous chapter. If Daniel Kahn had not made this content, my campaign would not have been as good as it is. And I don't really have a good head for silly side quests and stuff like that. So, like, I just took whatever he had and I was like, this works great. Now, one thing that I did add from the raw adventure is I added a couple of NPCs from the Witchlight Discord. Sabella, the Love Revenant, and I added who was the other one? Oh, I added the Bandersnatch. I also added toasted cheese, but neither of my groups ran into toasted cheese. I added them to the random encounters table, but neither group ever ran into toasted cheese. I even had the scene and the encounter ready for toasted cheese, but it didn't happen. And then my own additions, I did an entire adventure arc that took place in Coast City, aka Seattle, and they had to go to BronyCon, and they had to do all sorts of weird contemporary fantasy stuff, and that was a very fun arc. I'm pretty happy because I'm pretty sure my players thought that was the most fun of the entire campaign. So to know that the most fun of the entire campaign was all me felt pretty good. So, but yeah, I felt like as written, this campaign was very weak. It had some great ideas. It had some lazy execution, and it showed that they put a lot of money into the art, into the marketing, and into the carnival, and then they just kind of I feel like they just dialed in everything else. The dungeons that they had were great. The palace was great. The Scabatha's workshop or whatever, that was amazing. And Bavlorna's house, I don't know any group that actually ran Bavlorna's house as a dungeon, but it was pretty cool. And then, of course, Motherhorn was fantastic. So, like, the dungeons that they included with this were great. And the artwork for the adventure was amazing. But it just felt unfinished. It felt like they had these cool ideas, but nobody really wanted to put the effort in to do anything with it. Everything felt disconnected from everything else in the adventure, so I felt I had to add that extra content in to kind of flesh it out. All right, so what went wrong with your campaign?
What went wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what went wrong, and when you're reading the maps, when you're reading the adventure, unlike, let's say, Tomb of Annihilation or Rime, it's hard for me to visualize how long it would actually take the party to get from one location to the next.
Right.
Because the module is kind of written, and it's kind of the theme that they just get there. And
right.
I feel like that's something that went wrong with my campaign, is that, and maybe this is just a 5e thing in general, I didn't push it hard enough to be focused on that exploration of the world. And what I did was, the scenes of them traveling were the random encounters that were included in the book, and I kind of tooled those a little bit towards my party, changing out, for example, Winterbow the Centaur for a character for one of my characters' backstories, expanding on the battlefield. But without those random encounters that they included with the module, if you didn't use those, it's kind of hard for me, at least, to imagine how you could explain them getting from one scene to the next, or one place in these domains to the next.
Right.
So that's one thing that went wrong in my adventure. A second, I would say, for Chapter 5, I think I would have taken out the ability for them to use the chime or a knock spell or something like that to open the doors. I would want them to go and figure out that system. And that's just based on a couple of players saying, "Was it that easy?"
Yeah, I've heard stories about groups finishing Chapter 5 in 15 minutes. Yeah. By the time they get there, they have access to 3rd level spells. And if you allowed like flying characters, you essentially could fly in either through the roof or through the side door or something. Beeline it for the final room, and if you know what's going on, it's dunzos. Like that's right. It. Yeah. You can avoid all of the locks, all of the traps, all of the obstacles. It definitely, as a dungeon, was very casual. Like, it was like, you could do this dungeon if you want, and it's like, there's 50 fucking rooms. Like, what do you mean if they want? I had to prep 50 fucking rooms for this dungeon, and it's like it's all optional. Like, that felt kind of bad. Like, I was
Right.
fortunate that both of my groups wanted to explore. And so they looked around and they did stuff. But like, if you had a group that's like a bunch of SWAT team like murder hobos, they're going to be able to go in and be done one session, maybe an hour. If they know what they're doing. Like it was, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
And
that's
what
what.
happened with mine.
So that's what went wrong for yours. Is chapter 5 got cut super short because of how easily they wrote it. And then your travel stuff was just kind of a mess because they didn't really provide good guidance for traveling.
And if I could add one other thing,
Sure.
in Yon in Motherhorn, there is a room with a bunch of lightning bottles.
Yes.
I think I mentioned this to you in a private message.
Yeah.
One of my players, highly analytical, very smart guy. He came up with one of those wail on a house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to shrink myself down, go up Thanos' butt maneuvers, where he figured out an interaction of his abilities that would give him momentary invulnerability to lightning. He strapped all the bottles of lightning to himself and frog splashed the Jabberwocky.
Yeah. Yeah. That's rough. Now but in the defense of the player and of the adventure, I think you rule of cooled it because mechanically, I think they accounted for more than one bottle going off in the description of the bottles. So like under the bottles of lightning, I think it says like it does X amount of damage, and then if they do more than one bottle at a time, it doesn't like increase the damage or whatever. But I mean, you saw that they had come up with a really cool idea. Here, bottled lightning. As an action, the creature can hurl a bottle of lightning where it shatters impact. Creature hurls the bottle to a specific target. On a hit, it does 2d6 lightning. It doesn't actually cap, so one would argue, I guess, yeah, if these things busted open, that's 2d6 per bottle. The adventure provides you with how many were there?
I think it's 30.
Yeah. Holy shit.
And
yeah.
this is now something that I've experienced where I got blindsided with this.
Mm-hmm.
So now I know in the moment, I should be like, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here as we cut to commercial as we see this frog splash about to happen.
So yeah, so 60 d6 points of lightning damage if they can smash all the bottles. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Feels bad.
And
yeah.
At the moment, the Jabberwocky was sleeping. They had stealthed their way through. They hadn't done anything to necessarily wake the Jabberwocky up. I had the player do a stealth check as they were approaching.
Yeah.
They beat the monster's DC. All of the other people stayed in the other room.
Sometimes they drop a whale in the house, man. I mean, they're going to remember that for the rest of their life. When he's at an old folks' home, he's going to turn to the robot nurse and he's going to be like, "Did I ever tell you about the time I did 60 d6 points of damage? It was incredible. It was one of the greatest moments of my life." So, I mean, that's cool. Like, I mean, you gave them that moment. I read about chapter 5 and I was like, God, I'm really sad because I remade the maps for Chapter 5 before finding out that groups were finishing Chapter 5 in like an hour or less. And I was like, oh, my heart is going to break so hard if they do this dungeon in an hour or less. But my Witchlight group was vying for the trophy of slowest D&D group in the history of D&D. And so I shouldn't have worried at all because I think if we had had another couple of weeks, they would have 5-starred that dungeon. They would have looked for every nook and cranny. If they hadn't run into the Jabberwock when they did, and the Jabberwock hadn't noticed them when it did, I think that they would have been able to 5-star the dungeon. And then they would have found a solution that didn't involve a drawn-out battle against literally everybody in the castle.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like some things did go wrong for you, and a lot of it was the way the adventure was written, and they are legitimate complaints that I've heard about the adventure. For me, what went wrong? I'm going to say the things that went wrong in my game was I didn't have a very good system for the Mundentity Phantasona system.
Mhm.
It was a mess from the beginning to the end. It never made sense. It was never consistent. I never enforced it consistently. It was like, can I have this ability? And I'm like, I don't care, right? If I could do it again, I would have probably just had um, them start like I'm doing Curse of Strahd as like level 0 classes based on their
Mhm.
mundentity, and then as they leveled, they just would have gained their normal hero classes. I wouldn't have tried to do. You have a mundentity that levels up, and then you also have a phantasona that levels up. I think it was cool, and I think it was fun to have two different classes that kind of you could flip flop back and forth between. But I think mechanically, it would have been a simpler time to just be like, you retain your real life stuff and then you regain your fantasy stuff. So that's something that kind of fell short. There was just a lot of inconsistencies in the game,
Right.
and so many inconsistencies, more even than Odyssey, I think, as far as inconsistencies go. It was like 5 different teams of writers wrote this adventure, and they at no point checked in with each other at all. And so I don't want to blame everything that went wrong in my game on the bad writing, but I also don't, and maybe I'm being a little full of myself here. I don't think too many things went wrong in my game.
Mm.
So I think that I'm a experienced enough storyteller and game master that I saw where things could go wrong and I fixed it ahead of time. But I would
Mhm.
say that this adventure has so many pitfalls, so many inconsistencies. It's just super poorly balanced, written, designed. It would be very easy for things to go wrong trying to run this campaign. And your group, if you run this raw, your group is going to finish up and be like, what the hell even happened?
Mhm.
Like, what even happened? Like, what was the point? What were we doing? Why were we doing it? Because like so much of it just doesn't make sense. So much of it is just throwaway um, stuff that doesn't matter, that doesn't mean anything. It was a mess. It was kind of a garbage fire. It had beautiful art though. Beautiful art.
It
Um,
had very beautiful art.
so that takes us to what went right. So what went right in your campaign? What went right in your Witchlight story?
What went right for me, I believe, was uh, the ending of my character stories and kind of the resolution of finding their lost things, the resolution of the start of their story to the end. Um, I think probably in this is gonna sound really strange. The best resolution was I keep referencing them. The player played Gyoza in one of your game. He took over the role of Clapperclaw the Scarecrow, and a character that in the adventure is kind of, as we were talking about, kind of crushed up and threw away after you meet them. They don't get a lot else to do.
Yeah.
We wrote that the hags essentially kidnapped him, unfortunately enough murdered him and his father,
Okay.
stuffed him into a scarecrow to turn into one of their minions. And as the adventure unfolded, it was him gaining his humanity back, very Pinocchio esque, saving his father, who had become a marionette in Motherhorn.
Was he break a
And
leg?
eventually,
Was he break a leg in your?
he was not Break a Leg.
Oh, okay.
That would have been really good.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that Break a Leg got murdered in your camp.
Well, it was Lex 100%. It definitely wasn't Fluffy Bottom that led to his death. It was definitely Lex 100%. So just to clarify that. Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything. I saw that. I knew it. I and anyways, yeah, that went really well. I think a lot of our combat encounters that we had went well because when you read their stat blocks, like the hags is presented, even if you ran the adventure like at second level or third level when they meet the first hag, they're gonna spank them. Like they're just gonna bend them over and kill them
I mean,
immediately.
Skabatha punches for a 5d6 poison. That ain't nothing to
Mhm.
slouch at.
That's true.
but by the time they face Skabatha, they're almost level 5 or are level 5, I think. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, none of the hags nothing, honestly, except Agdon and the Jabberwocky, presented any sort of challenge as written.
Right.
And the
And
Jabberwocky's challenge came from essentially stun locking you for the entire fight. So
right.
it was not great. It was not great as written. Yeah.
And man, I talk about this a lot on the DM server that I felt like for a boss at where they were put,
Yeah.
Agdon is so overtuned.
Yeah, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at his raw stat block here. He's got evasion. He's got a 3d6 weapon that makes him invisible to you,
Mm-hmm.
and a +7 to hit.
Yeah, no, and yeah.
I think his only weakness is he only has 36 hit points. But everything else, he's...
Well, no, his weakness is if they grab his scarf, then...
Oh, that's true.
Then he shuts down automatically. So I feel like they made him incredibly strong because they had like such a glaring weakness built in.
Okay.
Yeah. Now,
that's fair.
Yeah. In my face-to-face game that I ran of Witchlight, they actually recruited Agdon.
Oh my gosh.
Which I said, like, this guy is very evil. Like, he is selfish, he is evil, and they were like, well, we'll bet, he'll die if he doesn't join us. And then they just kept a close eye on him, and they kept promising him, like, treasure and amnesty from the queen and this, that, and the other thing. And so there was a little bit of like a villain redemption arc. But ultimately, more so than Fluffy Bottom, he was still very much a bad guy at the end of the campaign. But in my campaign, the Champions of the Stone were actually bad guys. Because they worked for, so yeah, they worked for one of the biggest bad guys in the history of Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, they, it all worked out. Okay, so what else went right for your game?
What else went right? I think I had a first-time player in my game. The once is now wife.
Okay.
Congratulations to them as well. First-time player. She played a full caster. She played a sorcerer. She played a Herringon, which was very flavorful to the adventure.
Nice.
And, you would expect pitfalls with new players, and I don't know if how much help she was getting. You would never be able to tell she was a new player. She masterfully roleplayed with each NPC.
Mm-hmm.
She knew how to like kick ass in combat, and it just made the game so much fun. Because maybe I'm showing favoritism here by telling you guys about who my two favorite characters were, but Fierhops and Clapperclaw are like kind of. I shouldn't play favorites here.
It's the campaign's over. The campaign's over. It doesn't matter now. Campaign's over. Yeah.
And it was fun because I didn't know going in that she was going to have such a personality where every NPC they met, she was going to use her Herringon Wilds to get them onto their side with her ability to friendship no jutsu them, and it worked. She did that with my version of Fluffy Bottom. She did that with my version of Bloody Toes. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful to watch.
Nice. All right. Let's see what went right in my campaign. I had a stellar group. I had a very good group. It was very much like I picked people. When I decided to run this game, my life was very, very chaotic. I was going through a lot of stuff IRL. I did not have the emotional capacity to start a group with new people. Like I was like, I'm going to run a game with people I know. It's going to be a short campaign with people I know, and that's it. Like I want to raise a little bit of money to help with my like move that's coming up and this and the other thing, or the move that just happened. I can't remember anymore. I guess we had just moved, and I was just trying to yeah, that's what it was. And I was like, wow, owning a house is expensive. I guess I'll start another game, but I don't want to be strapped down for like another 2.5 years with a Odyssey game or a Curse of Strahd game or something. That'd be crazy. So I was like, I want something short and sweet. So I got a fantastic group. I had a really strong group, a lot of good role players, a lot of funny people, and a lot of people that are used to my kind of bullshit and just sort of roll with the punches, trusting that it's not my intention to be unfair, It's just my intention to just present challenges that I have not thought of a solution for because that's your problem. And they were able to just kind of like lean into that and find enjoyment in that. And so my group overall was strong, and that helped tremendously. The isekai flavor, not the mechanics, but the flavor was amazing. And it changed every aspect of the adventure. It changed the way they role played, the way they played mechanically, because they were able to metagame in game because they're from the real world. They've played video games. They've played. They've read Alice in Wonderland. They've read Peter Pan. They've read Wizard of Oz, and it was refreshing to like have that contemporary flavor all over and in everything. And then it just sort of like reached its peak when we went back to the real world. And then Wes, RTK, who was playing Henry Henrik, the role-playing decision by him to say, like, Henrik will not go back. He will not go back. Like, he hates the real world. He hated his life in the real world. He will not go back. And then he played as Talavar, and it was very much like Talavar out from under the thumb of the summer court, on vacation, just cutting loose and curious about like this other alien world. And there was so much funny stuff. Like there was times during the Coast City arc where we were just crying with laughter from like the dumb stuff that these fey creatures brought into the real world were doing. You know, they got lost in a Walmart for 4 or 5 hours. You want to talk about like a real world dungeon, and there was just so much opportunity for like unique role playing, like role playing that we had never had to do before, because it's always in a high magic fantasy setting, right? It's always kind of the same background, right? But here was something so alien and so different, and you've got D&D characters trying to drive cars and trying to drive a U-Haul that has a unicorn in the back of it, and just trying to avoid the police and trying to avoid like suspicion from like people, and the backdrop of like BronyCon with people in fursuits and cosplay and all that to kind of be like the cover story for so many of their characters and allies. It was just the perfect storm of like silly, stupid stuff, like Michael Seraph Angel, like as like a thing that happened. It all just felt right. It just felt right. Yeah, going to a pawn shop and finding out that Mr. Witch and Mr. Light thought it was laughable the amount of American United States dollars they wanted to be paid to kill the hags, because they know that they could sell one gold coin for like $500 or whatever. So they were just like, okay, sure, we'll pay you 50,000 American dollars. It was just so much neat stuff that we had never explored and we had never done before. And I've been playing D&D for like 28 years. And the last time I did contemporary fantasy was World of Darkness and Changeling the Dreaming, which that is where I drew a lot of the inspiration for this, because in Changeling the Dreaming, you are a changeling. You are a fey creature that was traded for a human baby, and you grew up in the real world, and then you start to manifest your fey identity and powers and stuff in your late teens, and so then you get wrapped up in that kind of fairy world. And then of course Harry Dresden series, another great inspiration for contemporary fantasy. So it was just such a pleasure to take the skeleton of this Alice in Wonderland style adventure and then paint over it this isekai flavor, and then just see it actually work. To see it actually work. And then the joy I felt as a storyteller and as a creator when they went and took their fantasy characters back to the real world. I was so nervous about that whole arc, but to see it play out so well and be so silly and so fun and so cool, I was just so happy. Like after that, everything else in the campaign just felt like I was coasting downhill, because I knew I had peaked in that storyline, and I just needed to keep a strong pace to the end, but we were good from that point on. Like I had done what I came here to do. So that went really well. But yeah, a strong group and a strong homebrew hook were definitely the two biggest things that went well for me in this campaign. And I will say again, and I'll say it a number of times during the stream, without the work of Daniel Kahn and his Witchlight stuff, this would have been a very boring, very bare bones adventure. Wizards of the Coast really dialed it in. And if this man had not contributed, I believe, 10 unique adventures for this, it just wouldn't have been the same. He is the real like MVP of like any of these campaigns, feeling like a fully fleshed out campaign. All right,
I agree with that, and I think we talked about this. It felt like each chapter just got exponentially smaller and just smaller and smaller as you went forward in the book. Because I felt like the carnival itself, I had so much things to play with, and then I was like, okay, this is all right. And then when I get to Thither, I'm like, okay. And then I get to Yon, and I'm like, there's nothing for them to do.
Yeah. So on the stream, I've got the map up. And at the carnival was so front-loaded that it had its own map. Mm-hmm. Like, the carnival had its own side of the poster map. It had an entire, like, map dedicated just to the carnival. And then the other 4 chapters of the book got one map to share. That's how front-loaded the adventure was for the carnival. And then within the carnival, it had to be 20 different encounters or something. And then they were all like mini games, and they were all clever. All the NPCs had names and backstories that didn't matter at all to the adventure. Like, it was crazy. I was like, this is nuts that they would front load this adventure so hard. And then you get to Hither, and it's like, okay, it's still pretty cool, because you've got the Queen's Causeway encounter, which isn't hard at all. They literally just climb down. There's no actual encounter there. They just climb down. There's no checks or anything. There's no threat. There's no risk. That was the theme of the whole adventure. There's really just there's no reason to do anything. Like, you just show up, and the DM tells you that stuff happens, and then you go to the next place, and the DM tells you that stuff happens. You want to talk about a campaign that's on rails? Like, there barely was a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to Hither, and as long as you ran those random encounters, Hither had a lot of things to do.
Right.
And then it had an entire town and dungeon, which was Downfall, with some very interesting stuff going on. It had this tower, which did not have a lot of interesting things going on, unless you got the Daniel Kahn DLC. It had this really cool, like, moose serpent on the map that didn't do anything. And let's talk about that real quick. There's all these things on the map that your players are like, that looks awesome. And you're like, cool, because there's nothing about that in the adventure. What? Like, are you serious? There's nothing? Like, this Telemy Hill, it's a hill that's alive. There's got to be something cool happening here, right? Not really. There's like a goblin lady that's got like some mental illnesses related to keys, and some guys beat her up, and she's sad about it. That's it. That's the encounter on a magical living hill. That's it. That's all that happens. There was a lot of frustration. This over here, you can't see with all the drawings on my map, but there was this rock that had a big hole in it, and the sun was shining through the hole. And immediately, my players in both games were like, that's cool. I know that's important. Actually, there's nothing for this. And Daniel Kahn didn't even write something for this. Some guy whose name I can't remember from the Discord server for this campaign, he wrote an adventure for that, just so that people would have something to do if their players were like, that looks amazing. And over and over and over again. What about these cool floating islands? There's like a string. We could climb that string to get these floating. Nope, sorry. There's nothing there. Daniel Kahn had to write an adventure for that shit too. What about this cool pillar over here? This has got to do something cool, right? Nah, sorry. Nobody wrote an adventure for that. I did. My players didn't actually end up going there, but I wrote an adventure for it just in case. Like, it just happened over and over again. What is this cool archway? What's this cool archway do? I don't know. It's not covered by the adventure. And it was just like over and over and over again. It was like, they're like, what does this windmill do? That's got to be cool, right? No, not covered by the adventure. Doesn't do anything. It was really bad. It was really bad. Like, I could not recommend this product as is to anyone. because it's bad. It's a bad product. It's got great art. It's got great ideas. It's got a cool setting. It's got a cool twist at the end. And if you go get the Daniel Kahn DLC, you've got yourself an actual campaign. But like, as is, if you're only buying the adventure, I can't recommend this product. It's terrible. There was like maybe 5 things to do total in Yon tops. Even if you ran like the random encounters, and one of the random encounters was campaign breaking. It was like a tornado that randomly throws your characters everywhere, including the final dungeon. So like, if you run it raw and they show up here and you run that encounter at, you roll it and you're like, well, I guess you gotta do it because I rolled this encounter, and then your party just gets, or not all of your party, just some of your party gets whisked away to like the Palace of Heart's Desire. What? Like, I don't know. What? Like, it was just so bad. It was so bad. All right, so enough talking about the bad stuff.
Right.
What?
I
What?
think the theme of this adventure is honeypot. That's the theme of this adventure.
Yeah. They took these 2 lovely gay gentlemen, Witch and Light, and they said, "You want to hang out these two handsome gay elves at their Carnival of Delights?" And you're like, "Boy, do I!" And they're like, "Cool." 2 sessions tops, and then you're going on a half-baked Alice in Wonderland adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to see those 2 guys ever again. Actually, you're never going to see any of the cool people from the carnival ever again. Hope you have a great time. It was bad. So I think that covers question 6. What was your least favorite part?
Absolutely.
Yeah. My least favorite part was that the adventure was fucking terrible. That's my least favorite part. It was fucking terrible. It was... If I didn't have to buy everything that came out on D&D Beyond, because one of the things I provide with my paid games is you have access to D&D Beyond Legendary tier, so I want to make sure, we have all the stuff. If I didn't have to buy it, I don't think I would have bought it, but I did buy it because I got suckered in by their ad campaign.
Right.
But it was terrible. It was a terrible product. It's terrible. So all the negativity out of the way at this terrible product, there were some good things about the product. What was your most favorite?
My favorite part of the adventure, I think, was all of the kind of the Easter eggs and the referential things that you could find that help connect the story with the players. Like in your case, you remember the characters, the factions, the League of Malevolence, Valashal, you remember those characters. I changed that because I didn't see the cartoon, but that for me was a favorite thing because these factions were setting agnostic. Like, I could put any faction here I wanted, and if you ran this adventure, you could put your favorite hero and villain here, in my opinion, and it will work. My other favorite part, I know this is good. We were just talking about how good the carnival was. I loved the carnival. I feel like the carnival could be a one-shot thrown in at any point.
Yeah. Chapter 1 of this adventure, you could just, as a downtime activity, as a just like, oh, you just got off a really stressful adventure arc. Hey, this carnival rolls through. I mean, it's a planeswalking carnival. It could go in any campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In that carnival, I think my favorite thing that happens is the cupcake eating contest.
That does custard damage. Yeah.
Custard damage.
The unique custard damage, like an actual official damage type in Dungeons & Dragons called custard damage. Yes, 100%. Yeah. And you talk about hot swapping things out. This is the most Planescape adventure, in my opinion, that they have released for 5e. Mm-hmm. I am sorry, but like Avernus or whatever that fucking trash pile is over there, that is not a Planescape adventure. This is a Planescape adventure. This is an adventure that everyone you meet is from Oerth, they're from Forgotten Realms, they're from Krynn, they're from Eberron, they're from the planet Earth, they're from everywhere. Everyone is from everywhere. That's Planescape. It is a mashup of all the settings, of all the places, of all the things. Also, Clapperclaw in chat for you there. But I guess they missed the part where you said that they were the best and your favorite player of the whole campaign, so that's good. This was the most Planescape game I've run in 5e, and I loved it for that. I absolutely loved it for that. They even had a Magic the Gathering Planeswalker to kick off the adventure. Like, it was very much the first and most official Planescape adventure that they've made for 5e, and I loved it for that. And your point that you could swap out anybody for anybody in this campaign is 100% valid. This is your chance to fan service your group hard. They love Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty's in here. They love their previous characters from a previous campaign. All of them are in here. They had a favorite bad guy from 2 campaigns ago. He's a bad guy in this campaign. None of this makes sense, and that's the best part of this campaign, is that everything is just on the table. Anything is possible. When you said you're doing Power Rangers, I'm a huge fan of Disgaea, like the turn-based, grid-based video game. And they have, in Disgaea 1, and then carrying on throughout the series, they put the Power Rangers in there. And I remember seeing that and just laughing my ass off when the Power Rangers showed up. And then you said, yeah, I'm going to put the Power Rangers. I was like, of course you would. Why wouldn't you put the Power Rangers in there? Like, it just makes sense. So, fantastic.
The scene when they go into Loomlurk and they look down into the darkness that is the prison. In your adventure, you described, Elkhorn, almost destitute in water, his own filth on him.
Yeah.
And when they were like, "Who's down there?" and I popped up the art,
Yeah.
And they're like, "What the fuck? Who was in there?
Right.
The Blue Power Ranger?" Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The best part for me was that I was the only person old enough and nerdy enough in equal measure to know who Valor's Call was, and the characters in the show. So later, when he's trying to explain to them, right, like an old person, he's like, no, we're real famous. We're like really cool, really famous. And they're like, so do you know the Thundercats? And he's like, oh yeah, we know the Thundercats, yeah. And they're like, they're way cooler than you guys. And they're like, do you know He-Man? He's like, yeah, I know He-Man. Yeah, they're like, he's way cooler than you too. And they like knew all of these 1980s cartoon characters that, from the Valor's Call cartoon multiverse that they come from, right? Like, he's getting more and more upset, Elkhorn, that they can't... What do you mean? You know everyone else from the cartoon universe, but you don't know about Valor's Call? We're like the greatest heroes to ever happen. And they're just like, we have no idea who you are. And then the players, I think, still thought I had made these guys up until I showed them like actual merchandise of these characters, and they were like, holy shit. like they really existed, and we have no idea, because it was that like back burner satanic panic, don't let your kids watch this, don't ever talk about it. Yeah. Well, let's see. My most favorite part of the whole campaign was probably the isekai elements, but my most favorite part of the campaign was just the fact that flippin' Tasha was there. Tasha was the main bad guy / main good guy of the whole campaign. I was like, this is crazy. And like my online group, they didn't get it. Like, they solved the riddle that Natasha was like the name hidden on the carnival map, but they didn't connect that like the queen was Tasha. And admittedly, they didn't go to that one part of the castle where it's like one clue after another slapping you in the face telling you that this is Tasha. But like, I was like, when I got to chapter 5 and everything went from like a G-rated adventure, for the whole family, to like, this tower is full of demons, just fucking demons, just fucking each other, they're fucking people. I was like, whoa, wait, what? Like, yeah, and then it's just like, okay, that's a lot to kind of take in. And then there's that one puzzle with like the Baba Yaga and like the animated dismembered heads or whatever. And then there's the nursery that has like the evil babies that she put all of her sin into. And I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. I think that chapter 5 of this campaign was darker than anything that they delivered in Avernus. Like, I think that it was darker than anything ever. And it was 4 chapters of like cotton candy and caramel, caramel popcorn and hugs and handshakes and the magic of friendship. And then you get to chapter 5 and it's like Queen Zybilna into some shit. Like, Queen Zybilna is into some shit. What is wrong with Queen Zybilna? And like, all these red flags should be going up, right? That like, it's something's wrong with the queen. The queen is not a good person. And I just thought that was such a cool twist. I really, really loved it. I thought that was a great like little surprise, a nice little Easter egg. And I just loved the idea that everything was kind of flip-flopped on its head at the end of the adventure. And that last chapter, chapter 5, sets up so many cool like spin-off adventures if you wanted to use this as an introductory campaign to Planescape, to planar travel. This is a fantastic adventure for that, because now you have Prismere as your sigil, as your hub, and then you have the teleportation circle in the garden. You're working for goddamn Natasha, and like she could just send you on all these cool missions all across the multiverse. It just, that to me was the best part of the raw adventure. That and the Jabberwock, which I thought, despite the stun lock part, was one of the better like raw monsters that I've seen. There was so much, like chapter 5 to me was a redemption arc of the campaign. Like I was sad that they wrote so many ways to cheese the final dungeon into it, like you said, things that went wrong in your game, because it deserved more playtime and it deserved more attention, and it deserved to be explored, because there was so much great stuff in that chapter that would have been really, really good.
I have to point out, because like you just mentioned, the architecture that could be questionable for some people.
Yeah.
That architecture made my party question Zybilna in the final moments after she was unleashed from the times. They were like, why do you have all of these demons fucking each other?
Yeah.
And in the adventure, it mentions specifically, if they question the queen, she novas them.
Yeah, she'll kill them. She's the actual final boss of the adventure. If Valor's Call finds out that she's Natasha, they try to kill her. Like, it's a whole thing. I mean, they're not going to. Their stat blocks are absolute garbage, but it was still like, it was tense. The end of the campaign is tense. Like, because there's a secret boss in that campaign, and it is the woman you're supposed to save the whole time. Such a good twist. I thought it was really, really good. All right. So what, question 8, and we got to hurry up because we only got about 7 minutes or so. What would you run this again?
I would run it again, and there's someone on Reddit who is doing a reimagined. I would like to read his reimagined to see what changes he would make. I think a big change I would make is to try to do, I was not successful in this, and do a showdown with all 3 hags at once.
Beautiful, yeah.
It just didn't happen.
Well, I gave them their full coven magic, even if they weren't together. So each of them had plane shift for me, right? So I did the 3 little pigs where they would run to the next hag up the chain, essentially. Right. But yeah, I could see you running it again with a remix. Yeah.
How about yourself?
I've run it twice. I ran it face to face and I ran it online. I have everything prepped. I had some cool ideas that kind of came up that I might change. I would be more likely to offer a post game to this for people that know how it ends than to run it again. I don't know if I could run it again, honestly. I don't know if I like it enough to run it again. Because I felt again that it was a pretty bad adventure. And so I don't know if I want, with all the other adventures there are to run and the stories there are to tell, I don't know if I could see myself investing the time to run it again. Yeah, I think twice was enough for me. Right. Even though it would be very easy to run it again, since I have everything prepped in Foundry, I don't think I would. And then you already said if you ran it again, what would you do differently? And then finally, where or what would you do to expand the adventure or to bring the characters back for one more ride? All right, so
for me, how I seeded this in our post-mortem, because I replaced Valor's Call with the Power Rangers, one of my players actually became a Power Ranger because
Beautiful.
He found the blue Power Stone in the Castle of Heart's Desire. I had all of the Power Stones there. If you took it, you're going to be one of the Feywild Power Rangers.
Beautiful.
Only one of my players wanted to be a Power Ranger, and that was the Once.
Makes sense.
They call you guys. They need your help. The Machine Empire is attacking. They're attacking them on Earth. Come help us out. And I feel Valor's Call could do something very similar.
Yeah.
Or whatever heroic faction you put there. I had Lord Zed in this adventure. He was kind of playing the Zargash. He was in the spooky swamp room with the mud that would turn you into a demon.
Oh yeah.
They didn't find him. He's out there doing Lord Zed shit. Queen Zybilna knows that he's out there. You got to go find Lord Zed wherever he's at.
All right, fair enough. I had 3 ideas for post game. The first is you've read about it more than likely on the Discord community for this game, but an upside down Shadow Fell version of Prismeer is created because the plane is shattered into 3, and then it remains broken for too long, and then Queen Zybilna shattered herself into 8 different pieces, right? With the evil nursery and stuff like that, and all of that shattering and all those mirror themes, right? You ended up with a sort of upside down Shadowfell version of Prismeer, which I thought was pretty dope. I was like, damn, that's a good idea. People have really dug into that. You can get maps that are already made, regional maps. There's adventures already made, and it takes into account that you're going to be like level 8, and it kind of goes from like level 8 to like level 12, I think, to go through that Shadowfell content. So that's minimal work. Community's already kind of built it. A perfect follow-up to this campaign, in my opinion. The other 2 ideas I had was if you do work for the Queen, or if you end the campaign in good standing with the Queen, she asks you to help her with the Gratz situation, and that's definitely a high level thing, because Gratz is a very powerful, very iconic demon lord, and so how do you deal with that, right? So that kind of sets you up for some very high level Planescape Dungeons and Dragons to deal with Gratz and kind of get him to stop stalking his ex, essentially. Right. That's exactly. I mean, that's a plot line in the adventure, is that Gratz is stalking Tasha, and she's in witness protection, essentially, to get away from Gratz and this bad situation she found herself in. I was like, Jesus, that's pretty heavy, but all right. So that's something to deal with. And then finally, I liked the idea that Baba Yaga would get involved. And that's another thing that people are exploring, is like Baba Yaga. And then for my Isekai game, it's tempting to have Baba Yaga kind of punish Earth, because she knows that it means a lot to Tasha and it means a lot to these champions. And so rather than punish them directly, she punishes the things that they care about, because, Baba Yaga. And so they have to kind of make things right in the real world, but then they would have to go to deal with Baba Yaga. And there is a famous D&D adventure called The Hut of Baba Yaga, where you go into her chicken hut, and it's an extra dimensional super dungeon. And you have to kind of deal with that whole thing. So there's a lot of just really creative, really amazing things to do post-campaign. And that, I think, builds from what I said earlier, that this is the most Planescape flavored adventure you're going to find right now for 5e. And I think in that way it was a huge success. Flavor-wise, it was a huge success. Writing and mechanics and all of that, kind of a mess. Alexa, stop the timer. And look at that. We're right at time, and we answered all 10 questions. So
absolutely.
Boom. All right. Well, there's really nothing else to say. If you listen to this and you're like, that sounds like you really didn't like the adventure. I liked my experience running and playing this adventure with my group. I liked the art in this adventure, and I liked a lot of the ideas that this adventure had. I feel that, as usual, Wizards of the Coast dialed it in hard, and they honeypotted everybody with the marketing. And that's
the marketing, the cover, the alternative cover, even it doesn't tell you what you're going to be doing.
Yeah. So if you are thinking about running this campaign, do a little bit of research. I mean, if you've listened to us stream about this, you're doing the research. Really understand what you're getting into and understand the work that you're going to have to put in to make this campaign playable, I guess. Because right out of the box, it ain't great. But it has the potential to be one of the most fun campaigns you've ever run or played in. All right. So on that note, we're gonna call it. I got to go get ready for another Curse of Strahd game to start. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, Orph. Everybody that hung out with us in chat, thank you so much. And and also everyone who helped with Extra Life, thank you so much. We raised like $5,500 or something like that. We got one more Extra Life thing coming up on Tuesday. If you want to join in for that, DM Conti on the server is going to be running a World of Warcraft adventure. But after that, we're done with Extra Life for the year. So really appreciate everybody helping out, donating, volunteering, and raising awareness for such an amazing charity. Whenever you're watching this video and hearing me say this, look up Extra Life. Look for ways to donate and help. It's a great charity. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Crash.
Yep. Thanks for hanging out, man.